the Papa Culture Show with Jason Winslade and Lilith Dorsey. This, this is the best YouTube show on occult topics you will ever see.
This is the stupidest opening we've ever done, but I love it.
Guess what we're talking about today? Well, you would think that we would be talking about the latest awesome vampire thing, Nosferatu. But no, you would be wrong. We are not talking about Nosferatu, not yet anyway. We are talking about the phenomenon that just ended in December, the 6-season run of What We Do in the Shadows, one of my favorite half-hour comedies ever, which isn't saying a lot because I don't really watch a lot of half-hour comedies. I've got like a handful of them. But a lot of the popular ones I don't watch or never watched or whatever. But anyway, I love this show. I loved this show, and we're going to talk about it today. I've seen every episode. You have not.
No, I have not. They're going to take my fangs, but it's fine.
Yeah, you've only seen a handful, but it's all right. It's all right. But yeah, there's so much fun stuff to talk about with this show, and I not even sure where to begin. Other than, well, did you see the movie that it was based on?
No, I didn't see the movie either. I'm a bad co-host.
Okay. Wow.
Bite me.
Bite me. So yeah, the original movie was a 2014 film done by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, and you know, Taika Waititi, you know, produced the show and everything. But it was set in New Zealand, and it was a pseudo documentary about 4 vampires who lived in a flat in Wellington, New Zealand, and you know, their misadventures. You know, that was a kind of an underground cult classic comedy, and they decided to do the show 5 years later, but set it in Staten Island instead, and kind of changed the dynamic a little bit, and how they changed it, I think, was really interesting. 3 of them are foreign immigrants. One's a married couple, Laszlo and Nadja. Nadja is from the actual real Greek island of Antipaxos, which is this tiny island in the Mediterranean, which I think 30 people live there. But she talks about being, you know, that's her old culture from 500 years ago. Laszlo is Laszlo Cravensworth is from London, but he hates it. And of course, you have from El Canadar, the ever illustrious Nandor the Relentless. Fantastic character actor, and Mark Propch, who always plays a schlub, and he was in Better Call Saul playing Colin Robinson, the energy vampire, who's a very different kind of vampire than the rest of them. But they're basically this weird ass polycule that live in this.
I love that. So you put it together. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of pans. I mean, I don't think Colin gets in on it, but they're this like pansexual, like they all have sex with each other. Even, you know, even the men have sex with each other. But Laszlo and Nadja are married, and one of them, we kind of follow along the story of Guillermo, played by Harvey Guillen, he's been in a bunch of other things. I probably mispronounced his name, but I remember him from The Magicians, and he's been in tons of things.
He was so good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, he's the heart and soul of the show, and he plays Guillermo, who you know, gay Latino character who's fantasized ever since he was a child about being a vampire. He wants to become a vampire. He's Nandor's familiar. That's how he starts out. And there's this journey across the 6 seasons where he realizes that he's underappreciated. He's never going to become a vampire. He gets someone else to turn him, realizes it doesn't really work out the way he wants it to. They figure out how to turn him back. But by the end of the show, him and Nandor are good friends. And there's been all kinds of, you know, fan fiction type of stuff where it's like, you know, people always ship the Nandor and Guillermo, and And what's funny is that in the final episode, they do a thing where Nadja hypnotizes the audience into to figure out what the best finale will be, and it's the Newhart thing, where where Nandor and Guillermo wake up in bed together, like the famous Bob Newhart finale episode. So yeah, their relationship is really the heart of the show, and Laszlo and Laszlo and Nadja have their relationship is a strong part of it as well. And there's a lot, there's all kinds of crazy things that go on over the seasons, but the premise is that there's a documentary crew who is basically living at their house and filming them. Every now and then they get killed or get caught in the action, so there's some casualties, but they're filming this whole thing. So it's basically I think the premise was kind of like, what would happen if you like use the Office approach, the Office sitcom approach to mystical, horror, occult subjects, and the results are pretty hilarious.
I mean, I think it even predates that. I'm a big Office fan. I'm more of a British Office fan, but
Sure.
Watching this, I realized I was a big Jermaine Clement fan because I was a Flight of the Conchords fan. So like when it seems to me to be very Jermaine Clement, they're not singing. So I missed that. I still have Flight of the Conchords songs in my head.
There's a little bit of singing. It's bad singing.
Okay.
It's bad singing, but there's a little bit of singing. Yeah.
All right. But it seems like that whole kind of thing, like we're getting this really up close and personal, intimate look at weirdos, right? And it's funny.
Right. And they have in Flight of the Conchords and in this, they've got Kristen Shaw, the comedy genius, who was a student of mine at Northwestern when she was an undergrad and I was a graduate student. That claimed to fame. I actually have a painting that she made for one of my classes that had Ostara, like the spring goddess or whatever.
Oh, fantastic!
Most of the time, she was probably making fun of me. But she was so nice about it. You couldn't really tell.
I like her even more.
But I'm pretty sure she was making fun of me the entire time she was my student. As soon as I saw her in class, I was like, this is somebody who's going to probably go somewhere. It really is. Yeah, it really is a look at weirdos. And part of the thing is that Colin Robinson is even though he's immortal as well, but he has a different kind of lifespan. And there's the season where he dies but is born of himself and he's a baby, and then he grows up really quickly and it still has the face of the actor even as a baby, and it's really disturbing.
It is disturbing.
Yeah, but he has some idea of what it's like, what the real world is, modern world is like. But it's really Guillermo that keeps them connected to the world, and he's the one who basically takes care of them. And part of his story too is that it turns out that his family has like Van Helsing blood or something like that, and so he like has this unnatural ability to hunt and kill vampires, and it's part of his whole family, and so he has to like fight that, and he winds up killing a whole lot of vampires to protect his vampires. And and that's part of the thing of the show too, is that they're vampires, so they kill people. And it's kind of funny sometimes how they kill people, but they're not like good guys or heroes. It shows them early on turning a few people, like becoming, making them become vampires, and it's really horrible and traumatic, but it's played for laughs. So I don't know. It's kind of it's pretty funny. So yeah, they're this dysfunctional group, and there's various arcs through the seasons. But we ultimately see that they are somewhat they're ineffective as evildoers are. I mean, as evildoers, they're ineffective. There's this whole thing where one of my favorite side characters, the Baron Aphanas, which I just got this season. I just got the pun on his name.
What's the pun?
Aphanas, a fine ass.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Because the whole point, it's like they all I've slept with him, but it's Doug Jones.
Okay, I get it. Yes.
in the early seasons, he's Doug Jones covered in tons and tons of makeup, but eventually he becomes young again, and it's just him in like a dandy kind of look.
Oh, beautiful.
And he's got a hilarious accent, and he says he uses instead of V's he uses W's for anything. Vampire, you know. But Jug Jones is just he's just
It's
hilarious.
fantastic.
One of my favorites. And yeah, so there's a whole there's story arcs with him. There's part of his thing was that he had expected them to take over the new world, and they're like, well, we've taken over half a block of this road in Staten Island or something, and then eventually even the Baron is like, he winds up having a domestic life, and it's like, I'm getting.
I love that they're in Staten Island. I mean, as a New Yorker, I think that's amazing. it gives
Yeah.
it a whole new character, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, every now and then they venture into the city, and the city of Manhattan, New York City, and the most devious bastard in New York City. I mean, you could I don't know, you could quote this forever. But yeah, there's definitely this sense of Staten Island and its identity as a borough, and there's lots of comedy that comes from that. But I think part of what we see in the show that makes it really fun from a pop culture standpoint is the way that they kind of create this sort of occult subculture, a subaculture, if you will, that's going on in the world, and that people like the Vampire Council meets in the basement of this, like the city council building or something.
No, I thought
There's
that
all
was fantastic. I love that Vampire Council episode.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was fantastic. Everything about it. I love all the cameos.
And that's part of the thing too, is that it kind of is a love letter to the genre in a lot of ways, because so much of it is just meta references to folklore and vampires and pop culture. And there are still certain rules in the show. I mean, they can't go out in daylight, they can turn into bats, and usually when Laszlo and Matt Berry's characters, it's bat turns into a bat.
I love that it's not just intertextual with other shows like True Blood or something like that. It like also references the literature. And then if you look at it visually, they've got the woodcuts in there and the Gustave Doré images and all these
Right.
like classic things that, that's my style of whatever. Let's throw these weird, unrelated, copyright free images in here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what's brilliant about the title sequence with the that song. But it has all of that, all the paintings and the woodcuts and even photographs from the 70s or whatever. And often when they're talking to the camera as part of the documentary interview thing, it will intercut with old old drawings and paintings of woodcuts that they sometimes adjust to put some of the characters in there, and it's really fun because it sort of places them in history and all this kind of stuff. Every now and then, Taika Waititi would show up as a cameo, and so yeah, they were in the Vampire Council episode, and that episode from season 1 was probably like that made the show for me. That was what got me hooked, because it had had Tilda Swinton, it had Danny Trejo, even Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes, yeah. Evan Rachel
Wesley
Wood.
Snipes,
Come on. Evan Rachel Wood is
yeah,
definitely a vampire. There is no question
yeah,
that she's a vampire. They're a
yeah.
vampire.
Wesley Snipes over Zoom, where
Yes.
he can't get his Wi-Fi to work correctly.
I was going to say, it's like, it's not my connection. It's your connection. Perfect Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's part of what that's the comedy of the show, is that it puts these mystical characters in mundane situations, from everything from like local politics to the business world, to like they're just they have roommate situations, so they're trying to come up with ways to get along in the house, and things like that. But ultimately, what you see that's why the final episodes I think are really interesting, because it kind of lampshades all the major themes of the show in a way that makes makes the audience aware that the writers are themselves are aware of what the audience has said about the show, um, talking about the various themes, like whether it's about the immigrant experience, or it's about chosen family, or things like that, and it takes every single one of those tropes and then undermines them with comedy to be like, like Colin Robinson was like, he's talking about like, oh, chosen family and how important that is, and but my chosen family died 20 years ago. I hate you guys. Like it just kind of just a little swerve there at the end. But I realized when I got to the end of the show, what it ultimately reminded me of was Seinfeld. And there's a whole thing. Say what you want about Seinfeld. I mean, I think a lot of it doesn't hold up, and
No.
there was some pretty terrible stuff on that show. But in terms of like for the time, it was groundbreaking, and there was a brilliance to it, a stupid brilliance
Well,
where
that's the thing. I mean, I think the reason I didn't watch it is because of that maybe 25-30% that is like that lowbrow humor kind of thing that was on Seinfeld. That's very cringy to me. I was thinking about the scene where they get on the train and like the guy farts out Pennsylvania 65000, and that makes everybody else leave the train. And I was like, this is like that eighth grade humor where I'm sitting next to some kid telling fart jokes and I really want to get out of there. So there's that teeny piece of it that is why I don't love it 100%.
right.
And it's the same reason that like I could only tolerate Seinfeld and I could not tolerate whatever his name is that wrote all of those things. You know who I'm talking about.
Larry David.
Yeah,
Yes,
Larry David.
I could not watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. I just couldn't do it. Like I've
Yeah,
tried, and
yeah.
it's just too painful. Seinfeld I could handle at the time, not the other thing.
Yeah, it's too cringy. So I definitely saw some cringy moments in this, that were unpleasant to me. Okay.
Yeah. So, but one of the reasons why that it reminded me of Seinfeld was that despite all the stupidness in Seinfeld, there was a core idea that was really brilliant. Seinfeld was to me was like a modern Beckett, because there was a whole thing where it's the original show about nothing is Waiting for Godot, right? Because it's
That's a
about
huge stretch.
I don't know. I find this. I found this connection at the time, and I still stand by it, because the whole point of Waiting for Godot is that they are just doing nothing, and they're doing stupid things just to pass the time while they're waiting for Godot, while they're waiting for this to happen. And the framework of that show originally was that Beckett wrote it as a vaudeville piece, as these are
No,
these
I
are
understand that. I
yeah,
understand
these
all
are
of that.
vaudeville clowns that are
I
waiting
don't
for the main
think
act.
you can make the fact that its subject is about nothing into the same thing.
In the final episode of What We Do in the Shadows, bear with me. In the final episode, what Guillermo finds out is that there was a documentary, because the whole point is that the documentary is going, and they decide in the final episode that in the middle of one of their interviews they're like, oh no, we're done, we got enough footage, and the whole drama that they were in suddenly stops, and Guillermo's like, what, you're done after 6 years? Where how what do we do now that there's no more documentary? And it turns out that there was a documentary that was done in the 50s or something like that, with like black and white, and they're basically saying the same things that they say in the show. Said the same things and had the same situations, decades earlier, and then they found another documentary earlier on that's the same thing. So it's the idea is that there's no change. The vampires don't change. There's no evolution. They're just stuck in who they are, and will continue to just repeat things over and over and over again. And Guillermo's finally like, okay, I'm out. But then there's a whole thing where he still frowns at Nandor at the end, and Nandor wants to be a crime fighter. But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so there's this notion of in comedy, in this kind of comedy tradition that to me is very Beckett-esque. The idea that we're going to do the same thing that we did, we're going to do the same thing today that we did yesterday. We'll do the same thing tomorrow. It'll be funny, but it's all about repetition. So there's something in the show that I think lends to those kind of existential themes, but like existential
I
stupidity.
agree with you about What We Do in the Shadows. I don't agree with you about Seinfeld, and I suppose this is not a show about Seinfeld. So.
Right. So I think that's a major theme of this show. Ultimately, is about that. That when you're a vampire, you just kind of keep doing the same things over and over and over again. You never really learn, and that's part of the thing too with these characters is that they're idiots, and they kind of don't care. They're just like there's no reason for them to learn anything new, but they're also like they're half in, half out of the world. Like Nandor is a major basketball fan, even though he's still stuck in 16th century Islam or whatever. And
Well, you made me
so
watch the episode where Nadja's like obsessed with sex with a mortal, right? Like, so again, there's this kind of like,
oh,
and the familiars, there's this kind of desperate, like both loathing and fascination with humans.
right.
We're not this anymore, and we hate that, but we also want it in some way or want to possess it,
Yeah,
drink it in, right?
right.
Which I think
Yeah.
it's interesting. You're talking to me about the end. A lot of those tropes that I think you're going through is also, you've written about Buffy and dealt with all of that. There's the tropes that are attached to academic study of vampires, right? Like that's what it always comes down to. It's about immigrants. It's about othering. It's about all of these kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think with the Colin Robinson character, there's you begin to see like the whole premise of him being an energy vampire is that he intentionally is the most annoying and boring person you could possibly be because that that will drain the energy from people and that's how he feeds, right? Um, but you see in the final season that he actually, after all this time, ultimately he wants real connection. He wants to have friendship. The whole thing of building the monster too was about like having companionship, just a friendship, and that despite what he does, he still wants to connect with people. So that's sort of a theme. What you're saying too is that there's that othering, but then there's also that strong desire for connection to be part of the world. So there's that. Um, but yeah, the occulture aspects, I had you watch the episode where they had the night market, and
Yes.
there's like the vampire fight club, the familiar fight club.
I love it. I thought that was the most realistic thing. It was like I was back at an event in the vending room or something,
Right?
like,
Yeah, there is a place to go if you want to buy, a vampire, a magical spell or some kind of potion or things like that. There are vendors out there who are it's almost like their own kind of Diagon Alley that they have there where like you have to know the secret. It also reminded me of Neverwhere, the Neil Gaiman thing, where
mm-hmm.
it's like it's underground. You have to know the secret password and all that kind of thing. But it's that classic urban fantasy thing that just under our feet, there's this whole other world, or just around the corner, or hidden behind that building, or in the most mundane place you can think of. There are vampires gathering. So yeah,
No, I
that was
love
fun.
that. And I love that they take the subway to get there because that's like definitely an urban legend. There's always all these abandoned tunnels and people that live in them. They call them old people, right? And then, so who knows what's going on down there? So it completely makes sense. But I found it, again, to be really realistic. Like I've certainly been in somebody's, knife booth and they've pulled out some sort of treasure in this dark box of whatever the hell it was, that they're trying to sell me or poison me with, whatever. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's even stuff where like some of the characters who live in the tunnels, like Simon the Devious, played by Nick Kroll. There's at least a hilarious recurring character. They even get on a reality show. There's all kinds of just fun things where like in the last season they're filming some cop show on their street and and they wound up both Laszlo and Nandor wound up working as production assistants, and you know, so it lets them like make comment about Hollywood, and so the show is obviously it's very very meta. It's supposed to be, um, but yeah, I think it really does hold a very unique place in pop culture because it is that all the intertextual references to vampires, but it's also, like I said, it's that love letter to the genre and to to sort of fantasy and folklore based horror, um, and making it funny, and uh, Taika Waititi at the end was like, I can't believe the show ran as long as it did. It should have been over years ago. So I think he was ready to move on after a while, but you have people like Matt Berry, who's just a comic genius, I think, and he's done a lot of other things too, where like part of the thing like with his acting style was always like he just would improvise and he'd say a line different every time just to see how just bizarre he can pronounce things just to be
I
strange.
feel like there's a lot of him in every character that he plays.
Yeah.
I'm a big IT fan, IT Crowd fan.
Oh, he was an IT.
And there's so much of him in that. And there's so many of the other characters. He's just this sort of pompous, whatever. And it's perfect. I'm not saying he's pompous in real life. I'm just saying he's drawing on that from, I'm sure, where he's come from.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things that I think has so impacted the vampire genre and kind of vampire culture. I think that the Nadja cosplays alone, because she always had just fantastic costumes. They all did.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, I mean, go to any vampire ball. I mean, I'm sure you guys have tons of them in New Orleans. I'm sure there's going to be at least several people dressed up in as these characters because they were style icons as much as they were beloved characters. So it's
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm an emissary for the Endless Night Ball here in New Orleans, and there's always groups of 3, or even sometimes they get a Guillermo to follow them around. Right. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea of a vampire community as a polycule, I think is pretty brilliant and
innovative. And I think, yeah,
kind of accurate in some ways. So yeah, that's, I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say about the show, but I enjoyed it over the 6 years. There's plenty for you to enjoy in the future if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, I'm gonna catch up. Yeah.
It's worth following. I mean, yeah, there's definitely lowbrow humor, but there's also really subtle, very quick things where like if you're not paying close attention, you'll miss like 50 jokes that go by, and like visual jokes too, where it's like the references and the cameos and all the various intertextual things you mentioned, like they go by really quickly, and some of the throwaway lines are just bizarre and funny in ways that you and a lot of it has to be improvised. Like you got to imagine that there's a lot of improv going on in this. I may be wrong, but I haven't actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just also think that Flight of the Conchords was a lot like that too. There would be like, sure, 20 jokes in the span of like, 2 minutes, and you're like, yeah. And most of them were strange and from New Zealand. So I was always like, what? Yeah. Like,
yeah. I mean, I will say the early seasons, I think were definitely funnier. And I think as they went on, it was still funny, but I wasn't like laughing my ass off like I was in the earlier seasons, and it did become a little bit more, I won't say dramatic, but there was at least real emotional content with Guillermo's character and his journey, and you really feel for him, and you want him to be happy. You want him to
sure
ultimately find what he's looking for, because he is so lost that he's being, that he sees this world, this lifestyle, this house as somewhere where he feels at home. There's something obviously he's looking for that he's not finding. but yeah, the final shot of the whole thing is Nandor and Guillermo hanging out in his coffin as he goes into this Batcave thing. But it's a funny thing. You'll have to watch it. It's not
All
much
right, I will watch it.
not much of a
I will
spoiler, but
watch
it's a fun little way to end it. I mean, like most shows when they end, not everybody is satisfied with the finale.
Oh, sure.
Some people are like, oh, it didn't really. I think some of them might have been like, some people I think might be thrown off by the whole like none of this mattered kind of vibe. That like, oh, we did all this for a while, but really it's just we're just having fun, and there's not really any grand meaning to
Well,
this.
you and I are a certain age too, so I think we get the, beautiful wrap up, conclusion that is, we watched Newhart, we watched the Bob Newhart show, and then, we saw the evolution of that and how we've seen the bad endings, right? Like we've seen so many shows have bad endings. We could do a whole show about bad endings because there's a lot of them. But I think there's a beauty in this, in the intertextuality and the meta-ness of it all. And the classicness, right? Like we're going back to one of the comedy classics.
Yeah, and speaking of meta, that's one of the things where Nadja hypnotizes the documentary audience to find like what is your the best ending you could possibly imagine, and it's the Newhart thing. But there's a special features thing that Hulu actually has where Nadja comes back. She's like, oh, maybe that wasn't your favorite. Sure, fine, I'll do it again. You now will find the best, And so there's two of them, and one is a usual suspects thing where
oh, okay, yeah,
where Colin Robinson is the Kaiser Sose, and then another one's Rosemary's Baby.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's you can see that on Hulu. That it's the alternate ending, and it's filmed in just the same way, same kind of stock, same kind of angles. Total Rosemary's Baby,
beautiful.
Parody. Yeah, and that's great. So I recommend checking that out as the alternate ending.
Definitely.
So that wraps it up. We're looking forward to coming back with lots more for you in 2025 as the world burns down around us.
You will not see it. No, you will see it, and you'll see us. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. There's not much to laugh at these days, but we're trying real hard.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the next show. For Pop Occulture, I'm Jason Winslade.
I'm Lilith Dorsey.
Till next time.
Bye.